of Security Challenges in Contemporary Indo-Pacific, edited by Professor Zhichun Chu and published by World Scientific. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are all over the world, whether it's morning, evening, or nighttime. We really appreciate you coming down here just to celebrate the launch of this book. So this book looks at the key security issues in the Indo-Pacific, both traditional ones like border disputes and arms races, and newer ones like climate change, public health, and more. It brings together experts from across the region to give a well-rounded picture of what's happening and what might come next. So here today we have the program schedule. First, we will hear the opening remarks from Dr. Zvi Ruder, Senior Executive Publisher at World Scientific, and then Ms. Annalyn Rubuguio from the Desk Editor at World Scientific, and then also Professor Zhichun Chu, who is the book editor. Afterwards, he will open up the chapter contributors and also introduce them. Lastly, we will have a Q&A discussion and open discussion discussing the book. And if you have yet to buy the book, you can actually purchase the book for 20% off right now with the discount code WSASOC20. So I will now pass it over to Zvi. You can open up your microphone and just begin sharing and start the session off.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And yeah, I just want to, first of all, to thank 𝐒𝐲𝐥𝐢𝐧𝐞 for inviting me to this launch meeting. It's a big honor for me to participate here. 𝐒𝐲𝐥𝐢𝐧𝐞 and I know each other now for a long time, and we have cooperated on so many ideas and so many different interesting projects. And of course, this specific book that is now a culmination of, so to speak, of our cooperation is one of the very important publications that we have on this in this area. And of course, we're very excited to have published it. The topic is extremely important and is of strategic importance, of course, what's going on as far as security in Asia in general and in the Pacific especially. As you all know, 𝐒𝐲𝐥𝐢𝐧𝐞 is our successful author and has been for a very long time with a great number of very successful and influential publications. As far as I remember, the first one was in 2010 on People's Republic of China Today, it was called. And then he created quite an influential multi-volume reference set. The first iteration was in 2014 on globalization, development, and security in Asia. And then not just the new edition, but the new version of it was published in 2022, Security Development, Sustainability in Asia. And also there was a publication on critical decade in Chinese foreign policy. I think it was published in 2019. And this is one of the areas where World Scientific is very prominent. As you probably know, the contributors to this volume that are present here, World Scientific is not just a well-known international global publisher, but also is the biggest scientific publisher in Asia, because the headquarters have always been in Singapore. And so we have a very significant program in the social sciences in general, but specifically also Chinese-related programs. And so what 𝐒𝐲𝐥𝐢𝐧𝐞 has created was fit perfectly in the core of our program, in our publications. And it was not just a successful publication, but it was a great pleasure to deal with him, and always is, because not only is he a very successful researcher and a well-known one, but also a very nice person to deal with. And so I've always enjoyed dealing with him, and I hope that we will continue dealing with each other, both on the new book front and perhaps even on the journal front that we have now been discussing. Because once again, these issues of security in Asia is of primary interest and important to us as far as all kinds of publications. And so once again, thank you very much for inviting me, 𝐒𝐲𝐥𝐢𝐧𝐞, And we look forward to our continuation of our cooperation, and also to contributors of this volume. I would like to say that we would welcome your further contributions as far as potential volumes for our programs.
Thank you, Professor. So now I would like to pass the time on to Ms. Annalyn.
Thank you, Amy. Good morning and good evening to everyone. My name is Annalyn 𝐒𝐴𝐧𝐿, and I have the privilege of serving as the desk editor for Security Challenges in Contemporary Indo-Pacific. It has been an honor to work alongside our esteemed Professor 𝐒𝐞𝐿 Chu, our distinguished book editor. Today, we celebrate the launch of this insightful and thought-provoking volume, which brings together the expertise of some of the most respected scholars in the field. Their contributions offer valuable perspectives that are both timely and deeply relevant to the evolving security landscape of the Indo-Pacific region. Again, congratulations to Professor Chu and all the contributors for this remarkable achievement. I am certain that this book will serve as an essential resource for scholars, policymakers, and everyone seeking a deeper understanding of the pressing security challenges of our time. Thank you very much, and mabuhay to all.
Thank you, Annalyn. So now I will pass the time over to Professor Chu, and then he will also open up the time for the Q&A and also with the contributors.
Thank you, Amy, for serving as the MC today. And hello, everybody. Thank you for attending this event. I want to say hi to Renato first. He just signed in, right? Hello, how are you? I'm so happy that our book is to be officially launched today. I would like to thank World Scientific for the opportunity to publish with you once again. In particular, I want to thank Senior Executive Publisher, Dr. Zvi Ruder, for encouraging me to edit this book. As you mentioned, since 2010, I've been so fortunate to have published several books with World Scientific. It has been absolutely a great experience working with you, Dr. Ruder, and your wonderful colleagues in Singapore and elsewhere. Since I enjoy working with World Scientific, so when Dr. Ruder contacted me again about 2 years ago for this project, I immediately agreed without hesitation. So here we are, the book titled Security Challenges in Contemporary Indo-Pacific is ready to meet the readers now. Thank you very much, Dr. Ruder, for conceiving this idea and for having total confidence in me to edit such a timely and important book. And I look forward to working with you and your colleagues on the journal in coming years. I wish to thank the editorial and marketing teams at World Scientific for ensuring the smooth production and promotion of this book. Thank you, Ms. Amy Chang, again, for helping to organize today's event. And thank you, Ms. Nikki Choi, for helping to advertise and promote the book. Without your meticulous preparation, we would not be able to launch the book online now. And most importantly, I want to thank Ms. Annalyn 𝐒𝐴𝐧𝐿, our desk editor. Annalyn, you have been working with me from the beginning to the end on this project. Your professionalism and efficiency are exemplary, and your hard work helps ensure the quality of the book. So thank you indeed. Now, speaking of the quality, I wish to thank all the 20 contributors for your hard work. Dear contributors, you are the best. I'm truly lucky to have been working with such a dream team. You were invited to join me for this project, not just because you are good friends or colleagues. You were invited mainly because of the quality of your research and your expertise in your fields. You are distinguished scholars, experts, or practitioners in international relations, political science, sociology, economics, environmental science, women and gender studies, geography, medical science, and so on. I'm so glad you accepted my invitation and became part of this project. We are here today not just to launch our book. We are really celebrating the remarkable teamwork that has led to the publication of this book. Great job, everybody. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. It's been a great experience working with you all in the past couple of years. Now, besides teaching, research, and occasionally editing books, my family means everything to me. I'd like to thank my wonderful family. Some of them are watching online now, actually. Thank you so much for your unconditional love and unfailing support, which makes it possible for me to work on this project and many others. This book is really dedicated to you, my dear family. I love you all. Finally, I'd like to thank my students and colleagues at Bucknell University for their continued interest in my teaching and research. Thank you for your invaluable support for what I do. You are a great source of inspiration and motivation for me. Now, just a few words about the book. The book addresses major security challenges in the Indo-Pacific region, different from many other books on the topic, which focus on traditional security issues or great power competition. Our book covers both traditional and non-traditional security challenges. And in addition to great power competition and traditional security issues such as territorial disputes and arms race, we also look at middle and small powers and non-traditional security challenges such as demography, public health, climate change, and environment. And our book contains 17 chapters divided into 3 sections: big powers, hotspots, and various non-traditional security issues. And as Amy mentioned, contributors are really distinguished experts, hailing from Australia, China, India, Japan, the Philippines, Singapore, Taiwan, the United States, and Vietnam. And some of our contributors are here today online, and they are excited to share their chapters with the audience. So now I'd like to invite a few authors to briefly introduce their chapters. Each of them will speak for no more than 5 minutes. After that, if any other contributors online would like to say something about your chapter or any related topics, please feel free. We also hope to have a few minutes for Q&A and discussion before we conclude the session today. So let's get started, following the order of their chapters in the book, all right? First, I'd like to invite Professor Andrew Orris. Professor Orris is a professor of political science and international studies at Washington College in Maryland. Professor Orris, please give us a summary of your chapter.
Thank you very much, Professor Zhu, and thank you for organizing this splendid volume. I look forward to teaching from it next year in my International Relations of East Asia class. My chapter has 2 main takeaways that you can see from the title. Number 1 is that Japan has played an expanded role in the region in the past decade, particularly in areas related to military security. And this builds on Japan's long prominent roles in regional trade and investment. And the second big takeaway is that Japan has been leading the region in another way, in that it has been its population has been shrinking in size and rapidly aging for almost 2 decades now. And this is a situation that's accelerating and extending across the region. Japan became the first so-called super-aged country in the world, meaning that over 20% of its population was age 65 or over. And it reached that stage in 2005, so 20 years ago. And I say that Japan is leading in this area because all of Japan's immediate neighbors will be joining Japan as part of the super-aged club, either this decade or next. So let me just build on these two main points just a little bit. In my chapter, I argue that a new challenge for great power competition in the 21st century is how to maintain deterrence and robust defense capabilities despite this rapid aging and in many cases shrinking population sizes. So Japan's 2022 National Security Strategy sets out a goal of near doubling defense spending, of acquiring significant new military capabilities, and expanding security partnerships abroad despite this demographic challenge it faces. And this challenge is really especially motivated by China, China's strong international resurgence. And these two factors are related at multiple levels, the China challenge and the demographic challenge, because not just Japan, but China also is going to be facing, and in fact already is facing population shrinkage and rapid aging. So to give just one example from the chapter, Japan's population began to shrink in 2009, and China's population began to shrink in 2022. Japan saw 30% of its population reach age 65 in or over in 2023, and China will reach that by 2050. So in closing, I'll just say that there's a paradox here in the case of Japan, that at a time of intensifying demographic challenges, Japan's security posture and policies are in the rise in the region. So in closing, let me first of all impart some final praise on all of the chapters of this terrific volume and urge all of our Zoom listeners to read all of these chapters. And let me also give a plug for another book this year coming out from my work on demographic change called Asia's Aging Security: How Demographic Change Affects America's Allies and Adversaries, which will be released later this year. And you get a bit of a preview of the Japan chapter in this terrific volume. So thank you again, Professor Zhu, and to everyone Zooming in tonight or watching online to get a preview of this volume. I hope you buy the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Orris, and congratulations on your other publication as well. I got a note from Professor Renato Cruz de Castro. He said he may leave early. So, Renato, are you there? And I'll be happy to invite you to speak now. Professor de Castro, are you there? Well, he apparently has left, right? Okay, Professor de Castro, are you there? Well, all right, then let's move on. And next speaker is Professor Hemant Adlakha, professor at the Center for Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies at JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. Professor Adlakha, please tell us about your chapter.
Thank you, Trishan. Good morning and good evening to everybody. Good morning because I'm Delhi now in India, and it is 6 a.m. Not unlike you. Anyway, I would like to begin with not starting with my chapter, but since we submitted the chapter, and till now, that is when the book seen the light of the day, three very fundamental changes have taken place. And I think these three changes in the international relations and politics have put to test our thesis, or at least I can speak on behalf of my chapter, not the entire book. These three changes are: first, the return of Donald Trump to the White House; and second, the release of these three RI chatbot model; third, what the Chinese are saying, 𝐶huang hu tonghua, that is the 2 phone calls between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. These 3 changes have so fundamentally impacted the international politics that, of course, everybody is talking about what the President of the United States has started doing, how that is dismantling the current international order. Also, perhaps regulating, we have yet to see that re-regulating the geopolitics. And that is definitely going to has massive impact, at least on the subject on which I contributed my chapter, that is India-China relations. The title of my chapter was India-China relations, challenges, rivalry, uncertainty, rivalry, and challenge. All these 3 aspects of India-China relations have already witnessed or manifested the impact of the changes taking place because of these 3 fundamental changes I have mentioned. For example, our Prime Minister recently gave a statement on China, and experts in India are already saying that we have not heard such a positive sounding statement about China from our Prime Minister in the last 5 years. First time. That gives you an indication of what I am talking about. And of course, the traditional and non-traditional security challenges which we talk about and in various chapters, they are going to be there. But how that dynamics and equation will change under the changing or rapidly changing international order, that we are yet to see. And therefore, I would very frankly admit that when we wrote, at least I had not anticipated such fundamental impact these 3 changes will have in the current international situation. That is directly related to some of our core arguments, my core arguments in the chapter. So, I think I'll stop here. Thanking and Professor Chu. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Lacker. Next, Professor Ronaldo de Castro, do you still have time? You said you have to leave. Okay, good. Okay. So Professor de Castro is a distinguished professor of international studies at the De La Salle University in Manila. And he and I have been good friends since graduate school. I'm so glad you are part of this project and you are able to join us. Please introduce your chapter.
First of all, I would like to express my utmost appreciation to 𝐒𝐞 for bringing me on board this project. It's a really worthwhile project. So before I go into my chapter, I'll just discuss the current here in terms of the discourse. First one, of course, was to happen about a week ago when you have, of course, the former president
you
of the
Philippines
was releasing in the International Court of International Criminal Court, and of course, he was sent by the current president, President Bongbong Marcos Jr. People would generally look at it in terms of the dynastic rivalry between.
How can we solve this technical problem? It looks like he's frozen, right?
The Marcos. But of course, there's also the geopolitical element there. You know for a fact that during the time, okay, it's bad happening.
Oh, that's very unfortunate.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Ronaldo,
Hello?
can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Ronaldo, can you hear me?
Let's see. Hello, can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, now, yes. You were frozen for a little bit, but now it looks like you're back.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good. You sound good now. Maybe you may wish to restate some of the things you just said.
I'll come back. Oh,
Yeah, it's working now.
can you hear me?
Yes, yes,
Can you hear me now?
yes, yes. What happened? We lost him?
I think he might be rejoining the meeting.
Oh, okay, okay. Um,
Okay, I think he tried to join, then he left again. But he's
Oh.
inside now. He's inside now.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Renato, you're back.
I'm back. Can you hear me now? Hello,
Yes,
can you hear?
yes.
Okay. I'll turn on my camera. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you
good.
very much. Okay. As I was discussing, of course, the interesting public environment here. Of course, the fact that last week, again, I'm talking about former President Rodrigo Duterte being sent to the International Criminal Court by the current president. Although people would generally look at it in terms of dynastic rivalry between two families, there's of course a geopolitical angle there. The geopolitical angle there, of course, is the fact that Duterte represents the President Marcos, who is major shift in Philippines. Other issues that involve us, of course, in the last few days, there's been an announcement that the Philippines again would host the second unit of the medium range capability system, which of course made China not so very happy. The fact that you have the Typhoon missile system here, you already have one unit, and another unit would be coming. And of course, the Armed Forces of the Philippines has basically announced that they're more than happy to welcome another unit of the medium range capability system, which of course will not make Beijing very happy. And of course, this Saturday we'll have U.S. Defense Secretary Hegseth coming here for his first stop in the Indo-Pacific region. Usually, of course, you have the U.S. Defense Secretary going to Japan, but for one reason or reason, U.S. military assistance, despite, of course, the limitation, the cuts in U.S. assistance to several countries, to have a continuation of military assistance. So this is an indication of something. Of course, now let me go to my specific chapter. In the case of the Philippines, you have, of course, a dramatic shift from initial focus on what we call non-traditional security challenges, like international terrorism, secessionist movement, transnational criminal organizations. But now, of course, the focus is going to what we call geopolitics, and the fact that, of course, you have a recognition that the current threat that the Philippines is facing is traditional, it's geopolitical in nature, and it's a form of Chinese maritime expansion in the South China Sea. Then, of course, the other dimension there is possible China's effort to reclaim its renegade province, which is of course Taiwan, and of course the fact that Taiwan is the closest country to the Philippines. So there's a growing recognition here that China's maritime expansion represents a clear and present danger to the Philippines. Early efforts to address this, of course, involve getting closer to the United States in terms of the alliance, then of course building up the capabilities of the armed forces of the Philippines, going into the permanent court of arbitration in the Netherlands to file, of course, a case against China in the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. Then, of course, trying to have ASEAN involved in terms of pushing ASEAN to come out with the code of conduct. Then, of course, in the last 6 years of the Duterte administration, you have an effort basically to adopt a
policy of appeasement. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Still?
Not very clear. I can catch a little bit, but others say that they cannot hear you very clearly.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry about it. It's something technical, okay? Can you hear me now? No.
I can,
I think
somebody suggests that maybe you turn off your camera may help a little
Can you
bit.
hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Can you turn off your video? Maybe
Okay.
that may help a
Okay.
little bit.
Okay. So I'll just finish this. Of course, those are efforts basically to address what we consider the China challenge. But of course, last year, the Philippines eventually came out with what could be considered as a grand strategy. And that's a form of the comprehensive archipelagic defense concept, which I covered in my chapter. So the comprehensive archipelagic defense concept is a work in progress. This is significant in three respects. Number one, of course, is the fact that there's a recognition that the threat now is emanating in the form of China that is, of course, expanding into our maritime domain. Number two, there's an effort, of course, to develop what we call defense in depth, trying to push our capabilities not simply on the islands, but into our exclusive economic zone. And the third element, of course, is a recognition that given the fact that we're faced with a country that, of course, at this point in time has the largest navy in the world, has the second largest economy in the world, and of course, bent on expanding into the first island chain, we have to rely on our alliance and our treaty, our security partnerships with other countries. So I will end my presentation here. It's very unfortunate I cannot join you in the Q&A. We can discuss more about what's happening here. Okay? I end my presentation here. Thank you very much again for bringing me on board this project.
Thank you so much, Professor de Castro. Thank you very much. You have a busy schedule ahead, and thank you for stopping by and did your best to present despite some technical issues. Thank you very much, really. You contributed a chapter on how the Philippines has been handling the South China dispute. So now, from the South China Sea, we're moving to the Taiwan Strait. So next, I'm going to invite Professor Tony Taiting Liu to introduce his chapter to us. Professor Liu is an assistant professor at the National Chongqing University in Taiwan. Professor Liu, I think you are in Japan now, is that right?
Yes, exactly. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
That's good. Thank you, Professor Zhu, for inviting me on board. And I apologize again for submitting, the chapter late during the process. But I'm very happy to join this conversation and the book launch to celebrate the new value by Professor Zhu. So briefly, because I think there's a big lineup after me, so I don't want to take up too much time. But my chapter pretty much deals with the Taiwan Strait, and I think I can introduce it in two parts. So the first part pretty much deals with all the crises, so including the 2022 Nancy Pelosi visit to Taiwan, which sparked, some have said, the fourth Taiwan Strait crisis. Of course, we all know that for that event, we saw the PRC launching missiles again after some 25 years or so since 1995, 1996, which was kind of identified as the third Taiwan Strait crisis. Of course, the earlier ones, the first and the second, goes all the way back to the 1950s and the 1970s. So that's kind of what my first part, the first part of my chapter deals with. Second part pretty much deals with the international and domestic driving forces or factors that kind of propels the crises or the situation in the Taiwan Strait now forward, which is not exactly taking an optimistic route, I should say. So I looked a little bit at the Ukraine war, which some have said that, using the kind of popular phrase now, Ukraine today is tomorrow's Taiwan. Hopefully not, because that situation has really deteriorated. So that's one of the things I look into. The other factors that I take into account here is one, of course, what's going on in the United States, which has always played a very important role in or for the Taiwan issue, I should say. And of course, we are seeing a lot of new developments with the new Trump administration, which is unfortunately because the book is published already, so the chapter does not take into account. And finally, the last thing I want to mention here is it's some of the domestic driving forces in Taiwan as well. This particularly concerning the identity shift in Taiwan, which again, we are seeing a lot of new developments with the new incumbent president, President Lai Ching-te. And of course, there are a lot of new developments recently with some of the things he said, and a lot of the, I would say, the kind of building up of security or militarization of Taiwan due to the kind of threat that Taiwan pretty much faces regularly since I would say 2016 or so, because of this new shift in identity, because of kind of military planes kind of circling Taiwan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I'll stop here and kind of leave the time to others. But thank you again, Professor Zhu, for the invitation, and congratulations for the new title.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Professor Liu. I hope you enjoy your stay in Japan, and I look forward to seeing you in Taiwan very soon. So from the Taiwan Strait, we're moving to the Korean Peninsula. So next, I would like to invite my good friend, Professor Yang-Moo Koo, to introduce his chapter. Professor Koo is an associate professor of political science and associate director of the Center for Peace and War Center at Norwich University, which is a military academy in Vermont. I assume it's still very cold over there, right? Professor Koo, please.
Yeah, today we had the snow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so once again, thank you so much for inviting me to this great, important project. So just let me briefly introduce my chapter. As we know, when we talk about the security challenges on Korean Peninsula in current days, I think without talking about North Korea's nuclear and missile challenges, we cannot address the importance of security challenges on the Korean Peninsula. So in my chapter, I talk about North Korea's nuclear adventurism. So especially in after 2019, the Trump-Kim Hanoi the summit, which was a kind of failure, so that that issue became much more difficult to address. So in my chapter, I highlighted 4 factors that made the peaceful resolution of North Korean nuclear issues more challenging and more difficult. So briefly speaking, I think the 4 important factors were obviously COVID-19, the pandemics. As we know, since January 2020, North Korea shut down its border voluntarily. And so that until I think August 2023, already the Hami Kingdom was more isolated and segregated from the international community. So obviously, after the failure of Hanoi, the summit with President Trump, I think Kim Jong-un's desire to have the negotiations about North Korean nuclear weapons decreased significantly. So COVID-19 was a serious problem at the moment. So the North Korea focused on the domestic unity and how to break through all those economic challenges using only the internal kind of mechanisms. So secondly, as we know, at the time during the Biden administration, the President Biden wanted to have diplomatic dialogues with North Korea to address nuclear and missile challenges. But I argued that President Biden and Biden administration's gestures was not really active. So they just kept saying that without any precondition, we can talk about the issue, but actually the U.S. government maintained the so-called CVID stance, complete verifiable, irreversible denuclearization, without talking about the action for action or phased denuclearization kind of efforts North Korea has been arguing. Also, I think a lot of international kind of issues, especially the U.S. The withdrawal from the Afghanistan in August 2023, I think 2021, right? So there was a really the debacle of U.S. foreign policy and security policy. So also the Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, and then in October 2023, Israel's Hamas the conflict. So the U.S. couldn't have a focus on the North Korean issues because of all those distractions. Thirdly, I emphasized the emergence of new Cold War conditions in Northeast Asia. As we know, China, North Korea, and Russia, so the kind of triangular relationship became strengthened. In response to that, obviously, U.S., South Korea, and Japan security coalition got strengthened as well. So under that kind of emerging new Cold War conditions, obviously it was really difficult for especially U.S. and its allies to just encourage North Korea to come to a negotiating table. Lastly, as we know, starting in March 2022, in South Korean politics, conservative leader Yoon Suk-yeol became the president. So his policy was tremendously different from the predecessor, President Moon Jae-in's engagement policy. So the President Yoon's hawkish policy obviously made North Korea to be more kind of opposing to the diplomatic initiatives and overtures. So I think all these four factors, they made the North Korean nuclear issues and missile issues much more difficult to address. And later on, obviously, of the last year, like 2024, so many important things happened affecting the Korean Peninsula, such as the North Korean troop deployment to Ukrainian front, and even just November 2024, the conclusion of the Russia-North Korea Comprehensive Security Partnership Treaty, almost like a military alliance system. So those factors really just made the North Korean nuclear weapon issues much harder to address. So let me stop there. Thank you again for giving me the great opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Koo. So the three previous speakers have covered the three most dangerous hotspots in terms of international security in the Indo-Pacific region, right? South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, and the Korean Peninsula. And of course, Indo-Pacific countries or the region as a whole face a lot of other challenges. And we have a couple of people here, a couple of contributors here who may help us to understand, what other challenges Indo-Pacific countries are facing now. I think Professor Bart Puja is supposed to say something about her chapter, right? But I don't think she's here, right? Is Dr. Puja here? I don't think Dr. Puja is here now, right? No, okay. So next, Dr. Sandeep Candy Cooper and Dr. Pallavi Gupta co-authored a chapter on climate change. And I think Sandeep is here. And Sandeep, Dr. Candy Cooper, Sandeep is a research fellow at the East-West Center in Honolulu. And he's here now. So could you please tell us about your chapter?
Yeah, sure. Aloha, everyone. First of all, thank you, Dr. Shu, for spearheading this effort and bringing it to a smooth culmination. So I'm really delighted to, I'm really delighted to see the book, come out, and I'm hoping that more and more people pick it up and read it. Dr. Gupta and I, we focus on the threat of climate, the threats that climate change poses to the rural populations of India. So, as many of you might already be aware, India, even today, even after the significant rural to urban transition, has a significant population residing in rural areas. And a significant percentage of this rural population is even today agrarian nature. It depends on agriculture for their livelihoods. Agriculture and other agriculture-based income sources for livelihoods. Climate change significantly threatens these sources of livelihoods. For instance, India is witnessing significantly higher temperatures today compared to the past. And this is based on an analysis of long-term temperature data for the country. And what we have noticed is that as the temperature variations increase, that they have significant impact on the productivity of significant agricultural crops, paddy, wheat, and several other crops, which are either key sources of food or important sources of income for rural livelihoods. So these shifts in temperature tend to depress incomes, and this in turn threatens the long-term livelihood security of rural households. This is just one example. And in a country like India, where the society is still significantly stratified, the socioeconomic indicators like caste or economic class or access to assets or gender have a significant bearing on how climate change impacts rural households. So our chapter really tries to delve into these aspects. It tries to exposition how the impacts of climate change are differentiated across the society, how they first of all threaten sources of income of rural households. Second, how climate change threatens the health and well-being of these households, and how these impacts are differentiated by socioeconomic indicators. So that's I would like to stop with conclude with another illustration of how climate change impacts rural households. Many of you must have seen how when the pandemic broke out, one of the unfortunate and rather undeniable images of images from that emerged from India was of people walking back to their villages. This was the impact of a major shock, in the sense the state was unprepared to deal with this kind of a reaction from the people, and a lot of my people who had migrated from villages to the cities and who were kind of occupied in the unorganized employment sector were not prepared to absorb this kind of a shock. And the result of policy failure and the absence of adequate financial security among this social segment resulted in those heartrending images. What climate change threatens to do is to create many more of such situations where people may not, where it kind of puts pressure on the country's abilities to respond to shocks. One, it also puts pressure on people, on the limited resources of a very significant percentage of the population. And so it is these kind of uneven ways in which climate change impacts the population of India that we have tried to highlight in our chapter. We hope that you get to read this and several other and the other chapters in the book, and we hope that you'll find them to be worth your while. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. Thank you, and Dr. Gupta, for your great contribution. I think your chapter really highlights the all these other challenges associated with climate change, especially for developing countries. I'm sure the readers will enjoy reading your chapter. Next, we have Dr. Walter James. Dr. James is the founder and principal analyst at Power Japan Consulting, and he's an expert on Japan's energy security. Dr. James, are you still in Japan now, or you're back in the United States now?
Yeah, I'm back in the United States. I'm in the state of Oregon in the US.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Please introduce your chapter.
Yeah, thank you. Well, echoing the other authors, I want to thank you for inviting me to this project. I also want to thank World Scientific for, number one, publishing the book, and for hosting this launch webinar. So yeah, thank you all very much. So my chapter deals with Japan's energy security strategy. So there's a couple of things to unpack there. Energy security being one of the non-traditional security issues in this volume. It's generally defined as the availability of energy at all times in various forms, in sufficient quantities and at affordable prices without unacceptable disruptions to energy access to the country's citizens. And especially for countries like Japan, but also other countries that are reliant on fuel imports, ensuring energy security really necessitates, a lot of diplomatic effort and geopolitical stability. So it does link pretty firmly to other types of security considerations. And in particular, I deal with Japan's liquefied natural gas strategy. So liquefied natural gas, or LNG, might sound like a bit of an arcane topic for those of us who aren't very well versed with energy industry. But LNG is an increasingly important energy source. It is one of the fossil fuels, but it is one of the least carbon intensive fossil fuels. And according to analyses, global demand is set to grow by over 50%. Global LNG demand is set to grow by over 50% by 2040. Asia is particularly an important LNG market. Japan and South Korea combined are, let's see, among the top 3 LNG importers, I believe, China being the number 1 right now in the world. And then LNG in particular is crucial for Japan as well. Over a fifth of Japan's energy is coming from LNG. So I'll close the blind here. So in my chapter, I really make 3 principal arguments. One is that Japan's LNG strategy had successfully navigated both domestic and global challenges from the 1970s. So, what kind of challenges are we talking about? First and foremost, the 1970s oil shock, before which Japan was overly dependent on oil imports from the Middle East. After the shock, in response, Japan began increasing its imports of LNG to try to diversify its energy sources. The 2011 Great East Japan earthquake and the resulting nuclear accident in the prefecture of Fukushima was another domestic challenge. The Japanese government decided to shut down or pause all of its nuclear reactors, which accounted for something like 11% of the overall energy mix in Japan up until that point. And so to make up for that gap, Japan again imported large amounts of LNG. And then more recently, of course, as some of us have mentioned already, Russia's war on Ukraine that spiked world energy prices. I think Japan has been largely able to navigate that challenge fairly successfully as well. And then the last kind of global challenge that I have in mind in the chapter is the rigidities in the Asian LNG market. And there's several rigidities. I'm not going to go into too much of the weeds here, but there are things like long-term contracts, destination requirements, and things like that did not work in Japan's advantage historically, but the Japanese government and Japanese companies have been able to kind of weaken and bend at the margins to its advantage. So those are kind of the successful examples of successful navigation of these challenges. The second argument that I make is coming back to the Russia-Ukraine war that started in 2022. The war didn't really phase or disrupt Japan's LNG strategy. So a number of Japanese companies hold stakes in LNG projects in Russia. And these constitute essentially about 90% or 9%, of Japan's total LNG imports. And Japan considers these projects to be important for its own energy security. So despite political pressure, diplomatic pressure from the United States, and sanctions, et cetera, the Japanese government kind of pressured its own companies to maintain its stakes in these Russian LNG projects. And my sort of outlook is that they're going to continue doing so, despite the political pressure. And then third and last argument that I make is that in Japan, the domestic demand for LNG now is declining, but the companies that buy LNG from abroad, Japanese companies that buy LNG from abroad, continue to buy large quantities because they've shifted their strategy to reselling that LNG to the broader Asia Pacific region. So LNG demand is declining both because nuclear reactors are being restarted in Japan, renewable energy sources are being increased, as well as there was the previous speaker talked about climate change, but of course, tackling climate change is a big political agenda in many countries, including Japan. So increasing renewable sources, that's essentially leading to a decline in LNG demand domestically. But at the same time, Japanese companies that buy LNG are now trying to redirect that LNG to South Asia, Southeast Asia, at the same time increasing investments in LNG infrastructure so that those emerging and developing economies can take in more LNG. So basically what that all is going to look like in the future is that while Japan's own LNG demand is going to continue to drop, Japan's international role in the global LNG landscape, I believe, is going to continue growing. And so that's kind of the forward-looking outlook that I conclude with. So I'll leave it there. Thank you again for inviting me, and thank you again for hosting this event.
Thank you, Walter. Sounds like Japan is well prepared and is dealing with the energy security very seriously. And we'll hope that the other countries perhaps can learn from Japan, because energy security is really the lifeline of the economies today. And yes, Japan offers a good example for especially developing countries on how to handle the energy security and other challenges. Great. So thank you very much again, Walter. And we have two more contributors here, and they both expressed interest to briefly introduce their chapters. So we have Dr. Monica Chaudhary. She's a health economist, and she contributed a chapter on some of the non-security challenges that India has been dealing with. So, Dr. Chaudhary, could you please briefly introduce your chapter?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to write a chapter in this wonderful book. And thank you for inviting me to this inaugural session, Professor Zhu. So in my chapter, I explain 6 non-traditional security challenges in India. Malnutrition, public health, lack of public health infrastructure, energy security, water security, information security, and of course, the natural disasters. So, India is a vast country, and there are many non-traditional security challenges. So, in this country, we have to deal with the obesity, like a rising pandemic of obesity at one level, and on the other, we have to deal with the malnutrition. So a country as diverse as that has to deal with two different ways in which the society is transitioning. And obesity is the number of obese children in India is increasing day by day. And obesity has to be dealt with. So it is actually malnutrition of both kinds exist parallelly in in the country. So I express my concern on the rising pandemic of obesity and how to deal with it with the some of the nutritional interventions and of course malnutrition, because the stunting and wasting prevalence of stunted and wasted children, the prevalence of malnutrition, particularly the micronutrients in the Indian population, a part of Indian population, is alarming. So how do we frame strategies in such a way that we can parallelly combat both the challenges? Then energy security is important for any country, particularly the developing countries right now. And the entire world is going through an energy transition from exhaustible sources of energy to non-exhaustible sources of energy. And there is an opportunity there as well as there's a challenge, because India can lead the world towards, green energy. And in that context, I talk about lithium is critical to, the development of solar energy, lithium-ion batteries. So India has large resources of lithium, which has already been, found. So basically, a strategy around how do we extract lithium and utilize that in the development of solar energy in future, so that a smooth transition of a country as large as India from the fossil fuels to solar energy would also lead the entire world towards a more greener planet. So basically, India has to take a lead in that direction, and that's what I explain. Then we have natural disasters are like in one part of India there is flood, in another part of India there is a drought, cyclones, earthquakes. There are many regions in India which are undergoing very dangerous seismic activities. So how do we deal with natural disasters? The country has already taken many measures, but then, again, geographically, it's a very vast country. So there is always a fear of natural disasters. Then I talk about water security. I mean, water security is very close to my heart because, probably the biggest, amount of people who are under a threat of water security actually reside in India. The groundwater levels have drastically gone down, and more and more our dependence on surface water is increasing. So any kind of climate change induced water challenges, or if we have droughts in one part of the country for like a couple of years, there would be a very imminent water challenge. So I talk about that and the possible strategies that we can increase water security in the country. And the last is information security, which is, not much talked about. India has, at one level, India has gone through a digital revolution where, a lot of our day-to-day transactions have gone digital, and the digital revolution has very successfully been achieved in India. But with that, the information security, particularly for the banks, for healthcare, is the kind of information security infrastructure that is required to handle 1.3 billion people doing digital transactions daily is a humongous task. And this is one of the, already there have been many data breaches, and there are lots of information security challenges that we have faced, but not much is talked about in the country about that. So information security challenge. And then, of course, public health, lack of public health infrastructure. We've been talking about it for a number of years. Providing curative care measures for a population of 1.3 billion, which is also, facing the challenges of lifestyle diseases, is very, very costly. So unless there is a public health, there is a development of public health, India has ancient wisdom in the alternative therapies of Ayurveda and public health related Ayurvedic practices. So which is imbibed in the culture as well. So developing a public health infrastructure so that shift from curative care to preventive care can be made. And these are the 6 challenges that I talk about. And it was wonderful to hear all the, all the other contributors. And I'm really happy to have contributed to this book. And this is, as I heard the deliberations from other contributors to the book, I now know that this book has come out really, really well. Looking forward to have it in my hand and read it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhary. And yes, the 6 challenges you highlighted for India, I think can also apply to China. Perhaps these 2 major powers have many similarities. I think both India and China should focus on domestic challenges. Domestic challenge should be their priority. However, I think the difference between China and India is that China probably has to also deal with this competition with the United States, which India doesn't have to do, right? Yeah. So we do have a chapter. We'll have a chapter on other non-security challenges such as population decline and aging, right? But the author, Dr. Zhao from National University of Singapore, is not available today. But we do. So we'll go back to China and focusing on the traditional security challenges. And we have the author here, Dr. Bian Sai and Dr. Bian and Professor Wei Zhongyou from Fudan University co-authored the chapter on China's traditional security challenges, especially in the context of U.S.-China competition. So Dr. Bian is here. Please briefly introduce your chapter.
Okay, Thank you, Professor Zhu, and distinguished everyone. I'm Bian Sai from Singapore. Now I'm an academic visitor in Institute of South Asian Studies of National University of Singapore. It's a very great honor to contribute on this book. My supervisor, Wei Zhongyu, couldn't be here today, so I'd like to briefly introduce our chapter. Our chapter examines China's key security challenges in the Indo-Pacific, aimed at intensifying U.S.-China strategic competition. Briefly, we focus on 5 major flashpoints to analyze this, like deepening rivalry with the U.S., Taiwan, disputes in the South China Sea, also India and Korean Peninsula. So by analyzing those issues, we highlight how China navigates an increasingly complex security landscape. I hope this chapter provides a valuable Chinese perspective, and I will stop here. And it's my pleasure to be here and learn from the other chapters. Again, thanks to the World Scientific and Professor Zhu. Thank you all.
That was a really brief introduction. Thank you very much, Dr. Bian. And congratulations on your new assignment in Singapore. I wish you the best at the National University of Singapore. Looks like everybody has briefly introduced their chapters, right? And this Zoom room appears to be only for us here, right? I think I noticed that there's some other folks are watching live stream, other social media platforms. So unfortunately, they cannot join us, and that means that they cannot raise any questions they may have to us, right? So I think that concludes the introduction of the book. And now back to you, Amy. What's next?
Yeah, I think we can actually just conclude it here, and this brings us to the end of the book launch. One last thing before I will share my screen. And so if you are an academic researcher or, in your professions and affiliations, we would really appreciate it if you could actually recommend the book to your library. By recommending the book to your library, it will have more opportunities for the book to be adopted and more of your research to be shared around by the associate affiliations. So this marks the end of the book launch for Security Challenges in Contemporary Indo-Pacific. We really thank all the contributors and everyone watching online for joining us today. I really hope that you all enjoyed yourself, and more importantly, that you were able to really just encourage and share your research with one another. And we're all looking forward to this book. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you all, everybody. Really appreciate your attendance here today. Thank you. I hope to see you all someday in person.
So one question I have is, this book was printed out already, or it's coming soon?
Annalyn, you want to answer that question?
Yes, it's coming out this first week of April, so you can look out for it. We'll be soon sending out your complimentary copies as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's good to know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone. Have a
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Okay, bye-bye.